DAngelo did not die of that disease. At least, that's what his last doctor said. A secret kept for years, a story never told, and a confession that sent chills down the spine of the medical community. There was something in his body that didn't belong to medicine. From that moment, the truth about DAngelo was no longer just about music. It was the most beautiful nightmare his fans had ever heard. What did the doctor reveal, and why did he assert it would haunt everyone forever? Before we embark on this journey to decode DAngelo's final secret, don't forget to like and subscribe, because what you are about to hear might chill you to the bone. They say some silences are louder than any scream, and the news of DAngelo's hospitalization, not for an accident, not for a scandal, but for a sickness difficult to name, was exactly that kind of silence. The media buzzed, but his family uttered only one phrase: a long battle. No one knew what he was fighting. No one dared to ask directly. All they knew was that the man who once made the entire R&B world bow down was now lying still within 4 white hospital walls, surrounded by a terrifying silence. DAngelo, Michael Eugene Archer, was never easy to understand. In music, he was the wildest, deepest soul of his generation, one who sang with the pain of history, with the loneliness of a black man caught between the spotlight and prejudices that never completely vanished. In real life, he was so reserved as to be unpredictable, shunning the stage, shunning anything that invited public scrutiny. And perhaps because of this, when illness struck, he chose to face it alone. No press conferences, no sharing, no need for the world's pity, just him and the darkness growing within his body. The doctor who treated him, according to an account from a medical team member, said that he never cried out in pain. He just stayed silent, looked up at the ceiling, and occasionally asked, "How much time is left?" A question the listener immediately understood, yet no one dared to answer. They said his eyes held something that didn't resemble a dying patient, but rather someone who knew exactly what they were carrying, something beyond medical capability. Death from cancer. That's what they said. But those close to him felt something was wrong. A close musician revealed. He lost weight so fast it was unsettling, but sometimes he had surprisingly healthy days, his voice full of energy as if nothing had happened. Then, a few days later, he was exhausted, unable to utter a single word. His body fluctuated wildly, too strange for the progression of typical pancreatic cancer. And that's when the rumors began to creep in. Some said the doctor found an abnormal tissue lesion that didn't match any form of cancer they had ever encountered. Others claimed DAngelo once mentioned, "I feel something inside me, like it's fighting back." No one understood what he meant. Only Erykah Badu, who shared a profound spiritual connection with him, recounted in a private conversation, "He told me his body wasn't reacting to the medication like others. Something else was in him." That statement later became the fuse for a barrage of speculation. From Richmond Hospital, where he was treated, rumors whispered, the lead doctor had allegedly written in his notepad, "Patient has unusual reaction to treatment. Diagnosis needs reconsideration." That small note, if true, was enough to ignite social media, but no one was allowed to confirm it. DAngelo's medical records, according to hospital insiders, were sealed at the family's request. This only deepened the mystery. People began talking about a shadow doctor, the only one who knew the truth, but was forced into silence. On fan forums, comments piled up like layers of ash. "It can't be simple pancreatic cancer. He was too young, too strong. I heard the doctor planned a press conference but was stopped. Someone saw him transferred to a special ward where only research patients are kept." It was all rumors, but their spread was faster than any official communication. A hospital employee who asked to remain anonymous said in an interview, "That night when he was moved to the intensive care unit, we were ordered not to let anyone in. including family. Only one doctor was allowed access. The next morning, all the equipment was removed, and no one knew what happened in that room. What haunted many the most was DAngelo's calm demeanor throughout the ordeal. He left no public will, recorded no final messages, and shared nothing with the press. He only kept a small notebook, the nurse recalled, where he wrote strange lines. If the truth scares them, let them believe the easier thing. No one knows what that truth was. That phrase is still discussed everywhere today. To soul music lovers, DAngelo was more than just a voice. He was a symbol of pain, beauty, and the darkness within the black human soul. And precisely because of this, the quiet manner of his departure felt so strange to everyone. Those who knew him, from Questlove to Maxwell, all admitted DAngelo always carried a different kind of energy. Sometimes it was beautiful. Sometimes it was frightening. The attending physician, the one presumed to hold the final secret, refused all interviews. He left the hospital just weeks later, moved elsewhere, and never spoke out again. Rumor has it he confided in a friend that what he saw will haunt him for the rest of his life. No proof, no recording, just hearsay passed through layers of people, growing a little more vague each time, but that very vagueness made everything more terrifying. Amidst the gossip, one detail went unnoticed. DAngelo had participated in a medical study on cellular response to nervous stress years earlier, during his hiatus from music. A doctor in the research group mentioned that his body had unusual biological responses, especially in the tissue self-repair process. That statement is now being dug up by fans, connected to the final secret, and the blurry picture grows even more tangled. That room held no music, no familiar hum of machinery, only the pale white light and the gentle scratch of a pen on paper. They say it was the final night DAngelo's attending physician stayed in the patient's room after everyone else had left. He sat there, looking at the medical files on the table, then silently wrote a letter, not sent to the press, not to colleagues, but to the family. A short letter, carefully folded in a white envelope with no title. The clinical signs were not entirely consistent, he wrote, and there was something beyond the scope of a typical pancreatic cancer diagnosis. No one knows what compelled him to write those lines. Perhaps it was a doctor's torment. Perhaps just an inexplicable, vague feeling. But that letter, if it truly exists, became the smoldering fire that fueled all rumors for months afterward. People said the doctor once warned DAngelo's relatives in a private meeting, "Don't let anyone dig into this. It will haunt everyone." And since then, he vanished from the media. An internal source from Richmond Hospital, where DAngelo was treated, stated that the autopsy report, if one was conducted, was never released publicly. Rumors suggest that during the process, the doctor discovered a small lesion in the abdominal area, like a thin, unidentifiable tear. Some said it was from the medication. Others insisted that was not a cancer lesion. No official report was published, but the rumor spread nonetheless, as fast and deep as blood flowing backward. A nurse present that day recounted, "The atmosphere in the room was strange. Everyone was silent. No one dared to speak. The head doctor only said one sentence, 'We will not record this in the file.'" That statement sent a chill through everyone. Why hide it? Hide what? No one had the answer, only knew that the next day, all of DAngelo's files were sealed, red stamps layered over white, and all official information stopped at the familiar phrase, late-stage pancreatic cancer. Medical team members recounted that a few weeks prior, DAngelo had asked the doctor a line straight out of a movie. "If there's something else, would you tell me?" The doctor didn't answer, just placed a hand on his shoulder. Someone standing nearby recalled that DAngelo looked down at the floor, gave a faint smile, both exhausted and as if he knew exactly what the answer was. From here, the stories diverge. One side believes DAngelo's illness was not merely pancreatic cancer, but a rare syndrome, possibly due to an unusual biological transformation in his body, something previously studied when he participated in a medical project on neural response to music years ago. The other side believes there was external influence, something that caused his condition to fluctuate so erratically. No one has proof, but both paths lead to the same point. The truth was concealed, and the doctor was the only one who knew. Amidst the fragments of rumors, one detail went unnoticed. A few days before he left the hospital, a janitor found a small notebook left behind in the doctor's resting room. Written inside was the phrase, "Not a disease, but a reaction. Not genetic, but a transformation." People say the notebook was immediately confiscated afterward. No one knows if it's true or false, only that after the news spread, the physician vanished completely from the public eye. Those who met him described the doctor as principled, taciturn, always maintaining a calm demeanor. But since DAngelo's death, he became different. A colleague said he couldn't sleep for weeks, constantly mumbling if they knew everything would change. Although no one knew who they were, the way he spoke gave people chills. The story gradually turned into a legend, a doctor who knew the secret, an unaddressed letter, an unidentified wound, all merging, creating a blurry picture between reality and illusion. But in all these accounts, there was one common thread. Anyone who touched that secret said they felt heavy, haunted, as if something was looking back from behind the veil. No one dares to mention the incident in the medical community anymore. A few journalists attempted to contact the hospital but were refused interviews. A reporter who published an article about the case was asked to take it down within 24 hours. All traces seemed to have been erased, leaving only scattered fragments of whispers. And in that room, where the operating lights reflected on DAngelo's pale face, perhaps a whisper was heard, so faint that only 2 people heard it. A promise, an instruction, or a truth buried with that slowly weakening heart. People will never know because those who were there have all chosen silence. But the word still spreads that every time DAngelo's music plays, especially his final recordings, if you listen very closely, you might hear a strange sound, vague like a sigh, or someone very softly saying, "Don't tell them." And that's why, to this day, it is called the whisper from the operating room, a sound that has never been confirmed, yet haunts all who have heard it. They say the most terrifying thing is not what is hidden, but the certainty that something is being concealed right before your eyes. DAngelo's medical files are that kind of mystery. Cold papers, emotionless numbers, dry lines hastily written in black ink. But underneath them could be a truth no one dares to name. Assuming the rumors are true, then those files must contain abnormal signs, blurry areas on the MRI scans, X-rays that don't match the progression pattern of pancreatic cancer, or handwritten notes saying, "Requires further review, unidentified cause, inconsistent with pathology." But strangely, all of that vanished from the final report. The official record, according to those who saw a copy, simply stated, "Patient responded poorly to treatment. Rapid progression." A short, cold sentence, leaving no room for any doubt. From here, the darkness began to spread. A nurse who worked the night shift, according to rumors, said the medical team was ordered to severely restrict access to the medical records. Every time they needed to view them, they had to register beforehand with a supervisor present. Several young doctors assigned to analyze DAngelo's test samples were suddenly transferred to other departments. One of them allegedly said, "I don't know exactly what happened, but I know something was wrong with the test results." After that statement, she quit. No one knows where she went. In the music world, this story spread faster than a virus. A producer who once collaborated with DAngelo asserted, "I remember him saying once, his body felt like it was reacting in reverse, not pain from illness, but like something was resisting him internally. At the time, everyone thought he was talking about his spirit, about the pressure, about the long years away from the stage. But now, looking back, those words send chills. If there truly was an abnormal tissue lesion, the doctor faced three choices: publish, conceal, or adjust the medical records to avoid scrutiny. And perhaps someone chose the third way. An anonymous source from the hospital said that on the final night before the files were sealed, someone entered the storage room. The internal camera system recorded a figure in a white lab coat entering and disappearing after 15 minutes. The next morning, several pages were missing from the files. No investigation took place. The shadows in the files are not just in the medical data, but in how everyone behaved. Doctors close to the head physician refused to comment. Some wouldn't even mention DAngelo's name anymore. A female nurse recounted that merely discussing him in the cafeteria immediately led to a warning. Don't talk about that patient. The statement sounded like an order, cold, with no room for sympathy. Amidst the rumor storm, some claimed the file still contained a handwritten, unsigned note reading, "Need to re-examine the type of foreign cells appearing in the tissue sample. Inconsistent with common pancreatic cancer." This sentence, if true, is the crux of all suspicion. Foreign. What does it mean? An error or something that doesn't belong to the human body? No one can be sure. But that single word was enough to rock public opinion. After DAngelo passed, a reporter following the case revealed she had received an envelope via mail with no return address. Inside was only a blurry photocopy of a piece of paper scribbled with a few lines in pencil. "Don't believe the report. They erased it. Wait until the day the truth is unveiled." The corner of the paper had a coffee stain and a faint fingerprint. No one identified its source, but that piece of paper became the sole evidence of the hidden one. Since then, the phrase "shadows in the files" has been used by netizens as a symbol, referring to the secrets buried within the system, the stories strangled by layers of paperwork, the truths whitewashed with black ink. DAngelo's story is no longer just about an artist. It has become a symbol of what people fear most, the truth being buried alive. He is still referred to as a genius singer, but increasingly that name is linked to a fear. If everything in his body was truly abnormal, was it a gift or a curse? No one dares to answer. And while the world listens to his music every day, somewhere in the cold filing cabinets of a Richmond hospital, a few pages might still lie dormant, yellowed, erased, with handwritten lines that will never be read again. At night, the on-duty staff occasionally recount hearing a faint rustling of paper from the storage room where his files are kept. They say it's just the wind, but anyone who has heard it knows it's not the wind. It sounds like someone trying to turn back an old page to see, after all, what was erased from history. There are things people only dare to say when their breath is short, when the line between living and silence is just a hair's breadth. And for DAngelo, this seems truer than ever. The man who made the world immerse itself in soul music, in the rawness and vulnerability of emotion, chose silence in his final days. But perhaps silence wasn't because there was nothing to say, but because what he wanted to say was too heavy, too unbelievable, and too haunting to be voiced. According to an exclusive article, close relatives recounted that in his final days, DAngelo was in a state of intense internal conflict. There were nights he woke up abruptly, sat up gasping for breath, then lay down again, his eyes staring into space as if conversing with someone others couldn't see. A nurse said she heard him whisper, "I shouldn't have been silent for so long." But immediately afterward, he shook his head, pressed his lips together as if he had just muzzled himself. The rumor started there. People say that before he passed, DAngelo asked the doctor to keep a portion of the files so that my children will know the truth someday. A small message, light as a breath, yet heavy as an unreleased testament. If this is true, it means he himself knew something was unusual about his body. He didn't want it erased. He wanted it preserved, as a reminder for the next generation, or as a warning for anyone who dared to touch that secret. A hospital employee recounted that after DAngelo passed, his attending physician suddenly became unusually somber. He took no new patients, did not appear at medical boards, and eventually filed for early retirement. When asked for the reason, he only replied, "I have seen too many things that humans should not see." Since then, he vanished from all conversations, leaving behind a host of unanswered questions. When the news of DAngelo's death was announced, the music world was shocked. But the family gave only one piece of information. He passed away after a long battle with cancer. Not a single line mentioned the anomalies, not a word about the doctor or the unfinished research. Everything was wrapped in the cold solemnity of a press release. But those who were by his side, those who heard his final breath, still passed on one sentence, as if it were a confession too late to utter. If we had known that sooner, everything would have been different. That sentence spread, lodging itself in the minds of all who loved his music. What was that? A medical secret, a treatment error, or something deeper? A confession about loneliness, fear, or a part of his soul no one else ever reached? No one knows for sure. But people recount that in his final days, DAngelo no longer wanted to listen to others' music. He only listened to himself. Old recordings, hoarse notes, melodies that seemed to be self-interrogating. He once said softly, with a weak but clear voice, "I left everything in the music. They just need to listen closer." A close friend of his, Questlove, once recounted that DAngelo always believed music could preserve a person's true energy, vibrations no one could see with the naked eye. He believed that every voice, every drum beat, preserved a part of the artist's body, Questlove said. And if that's true, then maybe he left something in those recordings that science hasn't had time to understand. That statement, originally just artistic contemplation, now sends shivers down the spine. A non-profit organization in New York, dedicated to protecting the artistic legacy of black artists, once stated, "If the medical records are concealed, it's not just DAngelo's story, but the story of truth buried in the shadows." They compared the incident to the mysteries surrounding the deaths of previous legends, people who also carried that strange light between genius and tragedy. It seems for every generation of black artists, something exists beyond music, something that both honors and haunts them. However, not everyone wanted to dig deeper. Some of DAngelo's relatives felt that reopening the files and demanding an investigation would only further wound the family and disrespect his memory. "He suffered enough," an old friend said. "We shouldn't turn his pain into gossip." Perhaps they were right, because the line between truth and human curiosity is always fragile. When curiosity exceeds respect, even a legend cannot rest in peace. But the irony is, the harder they tried to forget, the more people remembered. The family's silence, the doctor's disappearance, and the files no one could see all became the pieces of a collective nightmare. Some describe that since his passing, every time they listen to DAngelo's music, they feel different. It's like his voice is no longer just singing, but telling a story no one fully understands, a fan wrote. Songs like Send It On, One Mogin, or Africa, already mesmerizing and haunting, now sound like sad prophecies, as if he had known everything that would happen. A famous DJ once shared in a talk show that when replaying The Root, he heard a strange frequency, very low, but it seemed to be the sound of another person's breath interspersed with DAngelo's singing. It might just be a studio error or a coincidence, but in the listener's mind, it became evidence of a hidden message. Some believe he tried to leave clues concealed somewhere within the layers of music, the bass notes, a form of oral self-confession. The press was clearly divided. One side argued this was the post-legend effect, when the public refuses to accept the simple truth that their idol is also human and can pass away from illness like anyone else. The other side insisted, where there's smoke, there's fire. They believed the rumors, that the doctor wrote a letter, that there were copies of erased files, that something in DAngelo's body defied biological law. And so the truth became a ghost. It slipped into every article, every comment, every melody. Every time DAngelo is mentioned, it's not just about a genius, but also about the final secret, something that seems to still be alive, still breathing out there. Some say it's just a rumor woven from collective grief, but others believe the secret truly exists, and one day it will reveal itself, like every truth that has ever been buried. And the doctor, he never returned. But a short article appeared in a small North Carolina medical journal, allegedly submitted by him anonymously, containing the passage, "Some patients carry within them something that medicine has not yet defined. We call it a phenomenon, but perhaps it is simply another form of life we have yet to understand." No author's name, no signature. But for those following the story, reading it was enough. People say this was the final message from the old doctor, an explanation or a warning. Perhaps the final secret will never be revealed. Perhaps it's all just rumors, a story woven from regret. But either way, DAngelo's shadow still falls upon soul music like a faint streak of light, beautiful, haunting, and ungraspable. Every time his voice rings out, we seem to hear a call from a distant place. Believe what is unspoken. And perhaps that is the ultimate truth. A truth that doesn't need to be proven, only felt. Because sometimes the most haunting thing is not what we clearly see, but the things that quietly live on in the listener's heart, forever, never fading. DAngelo did not just leave this world. He dissolved into his music, merging with every drumbeat, every breath, and every lingering, aching note that people still listen to every night. To this day, no one knows exactly what the final secret the doctor mentioned was. A medical discovery? A truth about his illness? Or simply something spiritual, beyond human comprehension? But one thing is certain. DAngelo carried that secret with him, leaving the world an ellipsis, an unsolved question, and a reverberation that has never faded. Perhaps he understood that sometimes the truth does not need to be exposed. Because if people are not strong enough to confront it, music is the gentlest way to say everything. DAngelo chose to speak through melody, through gaze, through silence. And that very silence echoes farther than any confession. The world can forever debate what he left behind, a mystery, a curse, or merely a misunderstanding. But for those who have truly listened, they understand that DAngelo didn't need to explain. Because in every song he told it all. Every hoarse bass note is loneliness. Every pause is a wound. Every silence is the torment of a soul that both wanted to save the world and feared being consumed by it. That is the internal conflict of a man who carried a soul too vast, so much so that his body could no longer contain it. Some say DAngelo is the final voice of a truly authentic soul generation, where art is not a product, but a confession. And perhaps that is his final secret. Music is not meant to be heard, but to be felt, to ache, to understand, to forgive. He did not pass away in silence. He simply returned to where he belonged, where the notes never cease, where his soul still sings, even though his body has stopped. And then, on quiet nights, when you play an old DAngelo track, if your heart suddenly clenches, that is not sadness. That is him speaking to you. It is his way of reminding us that sometimes we don't need to know every truth. We just need to trust the feeling we have. Because some things, the harder we try to understand, the further away they get. Only when we close our eyes and let the music lead can we touch the deepest part of our true selves. DAngelo concluded his journey not with a period, but with a rest, leaving the rest for us, the part that each person will find in their own heart. And that is his true legacy. Not the secrets, not the rumors, but genuine emotion, something that cannot be hidden, cannot be buried, and certainly cannot be forgotten. Thanks so much for sticking with us to the very end. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our daily updates. Now, feel free to check out some of our latest and most popular videos showing up on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.